Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Grace Hatfield with EHS Daily Advisor, and thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Faces of EHS. This is a segment where we feature environmental health and safety professionals and highlight their journeys and hear their thoughts about EHS trends and issues. Today, we're joined by Dr. Chuck Pettinger, who is the Vice President of Customer Success and Experience at New Metrics. So, hi, Chuck. How are you today?
I'm awesome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for asking. So let's jump right into it. Can you tell
Okay.
me a little bit about your position at New Metrics and what you guys do as a company?
Sure. I'm the Vice President of Customer Success and
Hmm.
Experience. So I help our clients get the most value out of the applications and, you know, different things that we offer. So I'm the one that
Hmm.
really helps people use the valuable information, tools, processes, systems, and kind of in charge of making people happy, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. So how did you get your start in EHS?
Um, so um, My start in EHS actually began when I was an undergraduate student at the University of Florida.
Hmm.
I was interested in doing something to help people, right? So I was pre
Hmm.
med, and then I was interested in psychology. And I went to a psychology conference and I saw Dr. Scott Geller talk. And something interesting kind of occurred to me. He helps people, not necessarily one on one, like in a clinician standpoint, but he uses his psychological principles and concepts to help safety cultures improve. And I thought, that's a really interesting way of kind of helping people. So I've
Hmm.
always wanted to do something to make a difference in people's lives. And my fellow psychologists make a big difference on a one-to-one basis, right? In a
Hmm.
small amount of people. They truly do an outstanding job, but I really wanted to make a large impact. So I ended up going to graduate school, and I got my PhD underneath Scott, and we did some really interesting research. And
Hmm.
over the years, I've worked with a lot of amazing companies, and I've kind of backed my way into being a safety professional via my
Hmm.
psychology doctorate, which doesn't sound like a, a direct path, but it really has led me to use some of the skills I learned as a psychologist to help organizations create a better, more inclusive and fact finding, proactive safety culture.
Hmm. So what is your best mistake and what did you learn from it?
Oh, well, when I was when I was young and doing consulting work with a lot of people, and the really methodology that I used was focusing on the employees and really
Hmm.
trying to get them engaged and building a safety culture from the bottom up. And that worked, but it wasn't really long lasting, right? I was looking for
Hmm.
things to be more sustainable.
Hmm.
So I've done a lot of research and reading up on change management, and I've done a lot of uh, work on trying to roll out initiatives to the entire organization. So it's
Hmm.
just not a safety initiative. It's just not a one department initiative, right, or an employee initiative. It needs to be rolled out in terms of really making a difference across the whole organization, and that makes
Hmm.
it really long lasting and sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is your favorite and least favorite part about working in EHS, and would you change anything?
Well, I think my least favorite part of working in EHS is to see organizations who have had serious incidents.
Mhm.
And usually, when organizations bring me in to help them, it's one of two reasons. One, they've reached a plateau and they're looking to become, better. They're looking to reach that pinnacle of safety. And the other
Mhm.
one, unfortunately, is when they've had serious incidents, right? And they're trying to fix a problem. And in that
Mhm.
case, I'm really working against the odds, trying to get people to, um, buy in. And all they see is, well, I'm only doing this because somebody got hurt, and the
Mhm.
company only cares because uh, they're going to have to pay higher insurance premiums. So I
Mhm.
think really looking at it in terms of not just focusing on the employees, but looking at the whole entire organization. So I've read a
Mhm.
lot of Cotter, and he wrote Leading Change. I would say maybe he's one of my influences early on.
Mhm.
And he talks about how to take organizations through change. So it's not just about rolling out a new program or initiative. It's really trying to
Mhm.
get people to go through this stages of change, as he calls it. So
Gotcha.
I've
So
read
what
that a
would you
lot.
say
Go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. What would you say is kind of the ratio of companies who come to you either looking just to improve or when they have a serious incident? What's most common?
Well, early on, it was a lot of companies that were looking to improve their safety numbers, which I would
Mhm.
say is coming from the avoidance paradigm instead of trying to achieve, right? So they're
Mhm.
trying to avoid their insurance rates going up. They're trying to avoid that next injury. And that early on, I think, was where the culture was. I've been doing this for 30 years, so I've seen
Mhm.
companies who came from that perspective. Now more and more companies are coming to me in more of the, I want to be world class. All right, I've
Mhm.
done all the easy stuff. What can I do to move to that next level to get to world class safety? And it really
Mhm.
stems from the change in philosophy, right? Instead of fault finding, we're you know I mean, it's been like 20 years that we've been talking about trying to focus on more positive achievement oriented metrics.
Mhm.
So that's kind of where that stands.
Yeah, yeah. Where do you think that change in philosophy is kind of stemming from?
That's a good question. I think there's a lot of influencers out there, and I think the
Mhm.
change in philosophy is that we've gotten to such a point in our incident rates that we're no longer moving the needle. We've done all the
Mhm.
easy stuff, right? We got people to
Yeah.
wear PPE, we've got people to wear hearing protection, all that kind of stuff, and people have to make a step change in what they want to
Mhm.
do, right? So to
Right.
do that, they have to think differently. So they seek out different types of authors and thinkers like Scott and Tim Ludwig and some of the other people who
Mhm.
think differently about safety, and that
Yeah.
moves people to that next level. So I think there's a lot of things that are written, a lot of now, because of COVID, there's a lot of workshops you can see online. There's all these
Mhm.
things that we can do to really push the needle. So I think the field has really been moving it forward.
Mhm. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, my next question kind of piggybacks perfectly off of this, which is how can company leaders make safety their top priority in their organizations?
Well, I would like to think of it as more of a corporate value than a priority, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Priorities can get shifted around, and
True.
right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if it is a true value for an organization, you would never
Hmm.
compromise your values, right? But you might
Right.
move your priorities around. So I
Hmm.
think really to move safety to that level of value, uh, the organization itself needs to kind of look back on how they talk about safety. Right? I've
Hmm.
seen a lot of vision statements and mission statements from global companies that fly in the face of safety, right? Or they don't
Hmm.
even mention safety. They don't even mention people, right? We're
Yeah.
going to be the best widget maker in the world, and that's not very motivational, right? And that says nothing about
Hmm.
how we care about people.
Hmm.
So I mean, really, to get people to value safety, it has to come from the top down, right? So
Hmm.
the leaders need to say the right things, talk about doing safety not because we have to or because it's going to save us money, but
Hmm.
because we're going to influence people's lives. And if
Right.
we can get people to feel safety from the inside out, it's going to be more long lasting. A lot of
Hmm.
times people talk about safety from the outside in, right? So you need to wear your safety glasses because it's a rule, or you're going to get
Hmm.
written up if you don't put your safety glasses on. When in
Yeah. They don't
reality,
quite explain it.
yeah, exactly. When in
Yeah.
reality, people, don't want to lose their eyesight. So when you have
Hmm.
conversations with people, make the conversation from the inside out. Hey, you know what? I know those glasses are fogging up. I don't want to see you lose your eyesight, or I've seen people lose their eyesight. let's put on those
Mhm.
glasses so you can see your grandkids get old or something like that. See,
Yeah.
that motivates people from the inside out versus outside in, builds
Mhm.
that sense of safety as a value to me and our organization, and
Mhm.
helps elevate safety to that top level.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. And I know you mentioned Dr. Tim Ludwig. I actually spoke with him previously for one of these interviews, and I asked him about what he thought about safety culture, and I wanted to ask you that as well, because he had some really interesting thoughts as a behavioral psychologist. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
wanted to hear
yeah.
what you thought about it.
Yeah, safety culture is really an interesting thing, right? Because a
Hmm.
culture is kind of a concept, right?
Hmm.
You can't measure culture per se, right? You can measure
Hmm.
people's perception of their culture, but culture is this thing that is all around us and ever present, but you can't impact it directly, right?
Hmm.
And if you look into the literature, there's a big difference between culture and climate. And we in the safety realm talk about safety culture when in reality, how we talk about it is safety climate, right? A climate can
Hmm.
be influenced. A culture
Hmm.
is long term, right? So people will tell you, and
Interesting.
from my own experience, you cannot influence a culture overnight, right? It takes
Hmm.
5 to 10 years in some cases to
Hmm.
really make a difference in the organizational culture. However, you can do things to influence the climate, which in the long term will influence a culture change. So
Hmm.
to do that, you need to get more people engaged. You need to use the data that you're collecting to be more proactive. And
Hmm.
really, that's what I've been focusing on for the last several years is how can we take all of this plethora of data that we've been collecting and give
Hmm.
it to the people proactively so that we can identify gaps in our processes and systems and reduce injuries instead of being reactive.
Hmm.
So I think part of the new safety cultures out there will be trying to be a lot more proactive by using your data, getting the employees engaged, and having the senior level leaders walk
Hmm.
that talk.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of data, I know you work with predictive analytics and safe and other kinds of safety data. So can you tell me a little bit more about that and how you think it will impact the EHS world?
Yeah, I mean, over the last, I would say, a dozen years, I've been working with uh, gathering up all of this safety related data.
Hmm.
And New Metrics, my company, we have over 12 centuries of construction data that we've
Oh,
gathered.
wow.
I mean, it's a lot of data.
Yeah.
It's a lot of data. And we have combined all this to be able to identify which construction projects are more risky. And we
Hmm.
found that about 20% of your construction projects account for 80% of your incidents. If we look
Hmm.
at the data right, now, that's part of the fun of it, right? Because a lot of people
Hmm.
collect a lot of data and it sits there.
Hmm.
And worse, it's in these silos, right? All the different departments collect their different pieces of data and they
Hmm.
analyze it separately, right? But if we're
Hmm.
going to make a difference, if we're going to create a better safety culture, we have to combine all of that data, break down those silos, take the data out of the filing cabinets, and
Hmm.
then interrelate all this information. Now, as a safety professional or any professional, we can't do all that stuff. That's why we need machine learning, artificial intelligence to help create these
Hmm.
predictive models. And I know
Hmm.
it sounds, you know, way out there, right? Prediction, and people don't like to think about looking into a
Yeah.
magic 8 ball and predicting things. But all companies are using some sort of analytics to help
Hmm.
identify where their market is going, where they should put their funds. Um, and I mean, even look at our weather, right?
Absolutely.
We've been
Yeah.
getting a lot better at
Hmm.
predicting weather.
Yeah.
So part of the fun of this is seeing how all these things interrelate and then
Hmm.
identify different characteristics or factors within an organization that we can proactively focus on and reduce risk before it happens.
Hmm.
As companies get closer and closer to reducing the amount of incidents they have, right? I have many companies who only have a handful of injuries a year.
Oh,
And
wow.
if they
Yeah.
only have one, does it mean they're doing better versus two? I mean, you don't know. So
Yeah.
what we have to do is evolve the way we measure safety. I think we're
Hmm.
really good at measuring injuries, but we're really bad at measuring safety. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. When
So
things are done right.
exactly, right,
Yeah.
precisely. So
Yeah.
we have to identify ways that we can take all of this data, combine it, feed it back to the employees, get them engaged in identifying ways that we can fix our systems and processes. I'm
Hmm.
not trying to fix broken employees, trying to identify what things in the system are allowing people to do risky things and then change the system,
Right.
right? It's not about
Yeah.
trying to fault find because that's where
Yeah.
safety for so long was, right? Well,
Hmm.
you did this, it's your fault.
Yeah. 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 And
Nobody's
as you were
really
saying,
upset.
it's kind of like, it's everyone's done the easy work of pointing out where the injuries happen, and now it's kind of, drawing out the systemic issues that are causing it in the first place, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, speaking of data, where do you see the industry heading in the future? Are you seeing any trends?
Yeah, so I go to all the big, or used to, I would say, go to all
Hmm.
the big safety conferences, right?
Hmm.
ASSP, NSC, and all of the different things like that. And there's a lot of real time data analytics out there when it comes to PPE. So
Mm.
there's belts that will measure how many times you bend over.
Oh,
There's
wow.
hard hats that will measure different temperatures and ambient temperatures. And of course, there's Fitbits and all sorts of sensors that will look at, your heart rate, right? And all
Hmm.
these people are collecting all this data, but nobody knows what to do with it, right?
Hmm.
So I'm asking these vendors, I'm like, so you get real time data on X, Y, or Z. So what do you
Hmm.
do with it? Well, we give it to our clients. Well, who's going to sit around and watch, this data? We need
Yeah.
a way of using it. So I
Hmm.
really think that, this Internet of Things that people keep talking about, we're going to see a huge push in that in the next 3 to 5 years when it comes to safety, right? The
Hmm.
connected worker. So what's going to happen is you're going to wake up and you're going to say, hey, what's my safety forecast for today? And
Hmm.
they're going to say, all right, well, this is the task that you're going to be doing. So I'm going to load this pre-job checklist on your phone. I'm going to
Hmm.
identify some potential issues that you might face working on this particular area, right? And if
Hmm.
you have a question, you can bring me in, and through your smart glasses, I can see what you're working on and help you identify things that might be risky or issues, right? And
Yeah, that would be pretty revolutionary.
yeah. And,
Yeah.
if I see your heart rate start to increase, or I know that the temperature outside is going to be in the hundreds, and I can send you a little alert that says, hey, you know what? Maybe you should stop and take a
Hmm.
breather and get a drink of water. Right. So,
Yeah.
there's some barriers to that. Right. There's a lot of
Hmm.
people who are afraid of sharing all this information. But I'll tell you
Yeah.
that a lot of Gen Xers and um, well, I'm a Gen Xer, but I mean, millennials, right? They're
Yeah.
not as opposed to sharing data as a lot of the different generations there have been. So,
Hmm.
if they think it's going to make their job easier, they're going to be safer. Sharing this information might be that next evolution.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I'm kind of on the borderline of millennial and Gen Z at 22. Um,
Right.
but I think like my generation for sure is a little more nervous about it just because we're kind of seeing more of the effects of what big data companies are getting into. But I think, if there is a good balance of it being useful, and then also it not being too invasive, then I think I'm all for that,
For sure. For sure.
um, yeah. So, to kind of lean more towards you and your life,
Yeah.
what are you most proud of?
Wow. I mean, I've worked with a lot of amazing companies, met a lot of amazing people, but really, I think the one thing that I'm probably most proud of is saving lives, right?
Hmm.
I really take to heart what I do and going in and helping organizations redesign what they do for safety, using
Hmm.
data to help be more proactive, right? Developing all these cool predictive analytics. Um,
Hmm.
I'm really proud that this can turn around and actually save lives, right? That's
Yeah.
been my motivation from the beginning, right? Make valuable differences in
Mhm.
people's lives. As a
Yeah,
matter of
there
fact,
you
I tell
go.
this story, and my my son does not like me telling this story, but when he was small and in the second grade, he brought me in, and it was like, show your dad off, tell him what he does. So I brought out all
Mhm.
these hard hats and safety glasses and gloves, and
Yeah.
my son gets up in front of the room, and he's going to introduce his dad, and he says,
Mhm.
"This is my dad. He flies around the world and saves lives."
Aw.
And I had
I
this
would've
little,
cried.
I
Did you
know,
cry?
I was in shock. I didn't quite know what to say. And this little boy in the front of the room said, "Oh, oh, do you have a cape?" You know,
Oh my
and they're
gosh.
like, yeah, I'm like some safety superhero. But, the real safety
Yeah.
superheroes are those safety professionals that I've met over the years who spend their lives trying to influence their cultures and
Mhm.
really working hard to make sure that all of their employees go home safely.
Yeah.
And you'll
Yeah.
never meet a more caring group of individuals than those safety professionals.
Yeah.
And I'm
Absolutely.
so grateful to have my whole career working with such amazing people.
Yeah, for sure, and that's totally been my experience in talking with everyone through Faces of EHS. Everyone just
Yeah.
they care so much, and it's really touching to see. Um, so my last question is, do you have any advice for people entering the EHS profession?
Yeah. Just buckle up, right? Things
Yeah.
change a lot. Um,
Mhm.
Try to get senior level leaders engaged. Try to get them to walk the talk. Really use your analytics. Take
Mhm.
all that data that you collect, and if nobody sees it being used, it's just going to be ignored, right?
Mhm.
Get the data out of the
Yeah.
filing cabinets and put it to use through
Yeah.
analytics and predictive modeling. Another thing I would say is focus more on the safety for the people.
Mhm.
I think there's still a lot of what I would call caveman safety, right? You just go
Mhm.
around and bash people over the head if they're not wearing the PPE. And
Yeah.
that gets you so far, but it's not going to move you to that next level. It's not going to make you have that step change. So
Yeah.
start focusing on safety from the inside out, not the outside in. And that's going to get you to where you need to be.
Yeah. Well, great. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights. And I'm really grateful that I got to talk to you. And I'm sure our audience will love to hear what you have to say.
Oh, great. Well, thank you a lot for the invite. And if anyone has any questions, they can reach out to me through LinkedIn, or you can find me at safetychuck@yahoo.com.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so
All
much.
right. Take care. Have a great day and
You too.
stay safe.